That young man got fucking released. Now they want to act stupid. These motherfuckers rolled up on him, tried to jump him, and one of y'all got stabbed. That's what you get. Oh, well, he shouldn't have brought a knife to school. Whole time he didn't even have a knife. He had a cleat sharpener because they were at a track meet.
The footage you're about to hear about has sparked an outrage that few could have predicted. You come across the video, and suddenly, the story changes. Supporters of Karmelo Anthony are furious after a classmate leaked shocking footage related to the stabbing incident that left a community shattered. For many, Karmelo was seen as a hero, someone who once saved a child from drowning. But now, that memory feels like a distant whisper compared to the reality that has surfaced. You can't help but wonder, does a good deed from the past erase the consequences of a tragic action today? Would you still defend someone you admired if new evidence suggested they crossed a line that can't be uncrossed? Details emerging from Memorial High School in Frisco, Texas, paint a much more complicated picture than the headlines initially suggested. The school has already suffered the loss of multiple students this year. Grief hangs heavy in the air. Against this backdrop, a stabbing involving Karmelo Anthony has left even his strongest supporters questioning everything they thought they knew. Some argue that the media's portrayal tried to soften the blow, leaning into narratives of self-defense and heroism. But as more students and insiders speak out, the story feels harder to defend. Accounts reveal Karmelo had a history of fighting, and even previous incidents involving bringing a knife to school. The leaked footage has only added fuel to the fire, showing a version of events that doesn't align with the image many wanted to believe in. It forces you to confront some difficult questions. If your own child was the one hurt, would you still search for excuses? Does someone's past goodness lessen the weight of their worst mistake? And when you see undeniable evidence with your own eyes, how much loyalty are you really willing to give? The answers aren't easy, and maybe they're not supposed to be. As you dig deeper into the situation, you realize the controversy isn't just about one moment of violence, it's about a pattern. A disturbing thread weaves itself through the story. Karmelo Anthony reportedly had previous run-ins at school involving fights and possession of a knife. And when you learn that he wasn't even qualified to attend the track meet where the stabbing occurred, a troubling thought creeps into your mind. Why was he even there in the first place? You start to ask yourself, if someone is willing to defy school rules, skip class, and bring a weapon into a public event, what else were they capable of ignoring when emotions ran high? Reports suggest Karmelo skipped school just to attend that meet, sitting under another school's tent, not to compete, but to confront. You might wonder, was this truly a situation that spiraled out of control, or had it been brewing beneath the surface all along? Was the stabbing an act of sudden fear, or the result of simmering tensions that exploded at the worst possible moment? And then there's the classmate's shocking confession, someone who knew Karmelo personally, admitting they were stunned by the incident, but also acknowledging that Karmelo was already known for fighting. You think about how normalized violence has become among teenagers, how many treat school as a battleground instead of a place to learn, how many fights have been brushed off because it's just kids being kids. At what point does repeated aggression stop being overlooked and start becoming a real warning sign? You're left with a sinking feeling, one that makes you wonder how many red flags had been flying long before tragedy struck, and how many people chose not to see them until it was too late. As more information surfaces, it becomes harder for you to view this tragedy through a simple lens. The anger among supporters isn't just about loyalty to Karmelo, it's about feeling betrayed by the narrative they were originally sold. At first, you were told this was self-defense, that Karmelo was a scared kid backed into a corner. But now, with the leaked footage and witness testimonies piling up, you're forced to confront an unsettling possibility. What if self-defense was never the full truth? You begin to realize how easily people cling to the first version of a story they hear, especially when it fits their hopes. It's easier to believe in a misunderstood hero than to accept the reality of a flawed human being making a fatal decision. But how many times has the self-defense claim been used to muddy the waters, to buy time, to create sympathy before the facts can fully emerge? You can't help but ask yourself, how differently would you see this if the roles were reversed? If it was your own family facing loss, would you still fight to excuse the one who caused it? Or would you demand the world to stop looking for ways to soften the blow? The leaked footage, according to early reports, paints a grim scene, one that undermines any clean-cut idea of self-preservation. And that's the part that stings the most. It's not just that a life was lost. It's that you feel manipulated by a narrative that may have never been fully honest to begin with. When the truth starts to unravel, you're left wondering, were you supporting justice, or just comforting yourself with a lie? Now you're faced with a harder truth, one that goes beyond Karmelo Anthony himself. It's about how society conditions you to react when tragedy strikes. When a young life is lost, there's an instinct to look for someone to blame. When a young person commits a violent act, there's a reflex to look for excuses. You're taught to either villainize or victimize, but rarely to sit in the uncomfortable middle ground where the truth often lives. And here's the real question you have to ask yourself. At what point does defending someone you admire cross the line into enabling behavior that hurts others? It's tempting to see the good moments, the stories of heroism, the smiles, the potential, and use them as shields against facing the ugly parts. But can you truly advocate for justice if you only hold people accountable when it's easy? Imagine if the roles were reversed. Imagine it was your son, your brother, your best friend lying lifeless at that track meet. Would you still be searching for reasons to downplay what happened? Or would you be demanding the world see the situation for what it is, brutal, senseless, and devastating? You have to ask yourself another difficult question. Are you fighting for truth, or fighting for your own comfort? As supporters rally around Karmelo, driven by loyalty and emotion, a darker reality emerges. Blind loyalty can sometimes cause more harm than good. It can allow warning signs to be ignored. It can allow tragedies to be repeated. And when you think about it, what's more painful? Losing someone you loved because of a terrible mistake? Or realizing you defended that mistake until it was too late to change anything? As you step back from the personal tragedy, a larger pattern comes into focus, and it forces you to ask even deeper questions. You start to realize this wasn't just an isolated incident. It's a mirror reflecting what's been bubbling under the surface for years. A growing culture where violence among youth is becoming dangerously normalized. How many times have you scrolled past viral videos of teenagers fighting at school, barely giving it a second thought? How often have you heard about another stabbing, another shooting, another life lost, and just moved on? You start to wonder, when did schools become battlegrounds instead of safe havens? The truth is unsettling. Schools have resource officers, counselors, policies, but all the systems in the world can't stop tragedy if the culture itself tells kids that violence is just another way to survive. And if no one challenges that culture, not parents, not teachers, not even peers, how much responsibility do you carry just by staying silent? It's not comfortable to think about, but real change never comes from comfort. And maybe deep down, if another life is lost tomorrow, the question won't be who to blame. It'll be whether you did anything today to stop it. By now, you're forced to confront the question that supporters of Karmelo Anthony, and honestly, society at large, can no longer avoid. Where does empathy end and accountability begin? It's natural to feel sympathy for a young person whose life will be forever changed by one horrific decision. It's human to feel torn when someone you rooted for falls so catastrophically short. But sympathy should never be an excuse to blur the truth. You have to ask yourself, are you standing up for what's right? Or are you standing in the way of justice because it hurts too much to admit someone you admired crossed a line they can't uncross? There's a brutal reality you can't escape. 2 families have been destroyed. One grieves a future that will never happen. The other faces a lifetime defined by a choice that can't be undone. The leaked footage didn't just shatter the original narrative. It forced you to look at the situation without the protective filter of hope, bias, or selective memory. And the longer you try to resist what's clear, the more you betray not just the victims, but your own sense of right and wrong. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good Karmelo was on his best day. It matters what he chose to do on his worst. You have to wonder, if you were sitting in that courtroom, would you be able to separate your emotions from the facts? Would you demand accountability, even if it felt like betrayal? Or would you cling to a version of the story that no longer matches reality, simply because it's easier? These are the uncomfortable truths you can't avoid anymore. Because when you look in the mirror after all the facts come out, the only question that will matter is, did you stand for justice or did you stand in its way? Supporters of Karmelo Anthony still flood comment sections, still rally behind him, still cling to the idea of the kid they once knew. And maybe part of you understands that loyalty, but deep down you know that loyalty without honesty isn't love, it's denial. And denial doesn't heal wounds, it lets them fester. You have to ask yourself one final question. Is it truly support if it demands you turn a blind eye to the truth? Supporters of Karmelo Anthony still flood comment sections, still rally behind him, still cling to the idea of the kid they once knew. And maybe part of you understands that loyalty. But deep down, you know that loyalty without honesty isn't love, it's denial. And denial doesn't heal wounds, it lets them fester. You have to ask yourself one final question. Is it truly support if it demands you turn a blind eye to the truth? Or does real support mean facing the painful reality, accepting it, and holding people accountable even when it breaks your heart to do it? The leaked footage didn't just expose what happened that day. It exposed how willing people are to believe whatever hurts them the least. And now it's your turn to decide. Will you choose comfort or will you choose truth? because at the end of the day, only one of those choices honors the lives that were forever changed.